Hello all. I thought we would discuss some things that we learned in week one. That way we'll make sure that we're on the same page together. Logic helps us to study reasoning. Is it a good piece of reasoning? Is it bad reasoning? Reasoning comes in two kinds. One we call inductive reasoning. Second kind we call deductive reasoning. Let's focus first of all on inductive reasoning. An inductive argument, which is the backbone of inductive reasoning, is defined as an argument in which the premises provide some support for the conclusion. You'll notice the phrase some support is put in italics. That's because it's the central phrase here. In other words, an inductive argument can never guarantee that its conclusion is true. It can only provide probabilities. Let me give you an example of an inductive argument. Let's say that I work for an engineer and she wants me to go out and get some core samples for a bedrock foundation because they're wanting to put a dam there. And so the handbook says for the area I'm supposed to go out and get 10 drilling samples. Instead I get 9, and when I come back I say, look, I'm going to give you this argument. The first premise would be the boring number 1 showed granite. The second one also showed granite all the way up through 9 premises, and so my tentative conclusion is if I had taken a 10th sample it would also have shown granite. The overall conclusion being the bedrock foundation there is granite. Is that a good argument? Yes. It's a pretty good inductive argument and there's pretty good support for the conclusion, but it's not guaranteed that the whole bedrock foundation there will be granite. In fact, since I didn't take that last sample, there's a part of the area there that could be some other formation, for example mica schist, which is very different from granite. In fact, they built a dam once on such a foundation. It collapsed and killed about 500 people. So it's a pretty good argument, but it's not one that can guarantee that its conclusion is true. So here's your important point to remember. Inductive arguments cannot guarantee that their conclusion is true. The other kind of argument is called a deductive argument. A deductive argument is defined like this. This is an argument where, if it is sound, can guarantee the truth of the conclusion. You'll notice that I put a stipulation there on it. It has to be sound. The important point with a deductive arguments can guarantee that their conclusion is true given certain conditions. Now, for an example, you remember from week 1 we had the argument, if it's raining, I will buy an umbrella. I bought an umbrella, therefore it's raining. That is a deductive argument. But we saw that the conclusion there was not true. So that means it didn't fulfill the condition. What is the condition? Well, if you look back at the definition here, it says it has to be sound. What is a sound argument? Well, a sound argument cannot be explained until I first give you a preliminary definition, which is a valid argument. A valid argument is defined as an argument in which, if the premises are true, the conclusion cannot be false. Let me say it again. A valid argument is defined as an argument in which, if the premises are true, the conclusion cannot be false. Let me give you an example of a valid argument. If it is raining, then the streets are wet. That's the first premise. Second premise is, it is raining, conclusion, the streets are wet. Notice that if the first two premises, if it's raining, then the streets are wet, and it's raining, if they're true, then the conclusion, the streets must be wet, cannot be false. So, again, if it's raining, then the streets are wet, it is raining, therefore the streets are wet. Notice that a valid argument in itself is not enough to guarantee the truth of the conclusion. It must also be a sound argument. What is a sound argument? A sound argument is defined as a valid argument with all true premises. Let me give you an example of a sound argument. First premise, all rain is made of water. Second premise, all water is dihydrogen oxide. Conclusion, therefore, all rain is made of dihydrogen oxide. Notice that both the premises are true and that the form is also valid. Therefore, if all the premises are true, the conclusion must be true, but all the premises are true, therefore it guarantees that the truth of the conclusion, namely all rain is made of dihydrogen oxide, is true. That is what it is to be a sound argument. I hope you found this helpful.